case everybody, willing that everybody has one of these so they can really get their workout in regularly. All types of things you can do with this. I'm not going to stop advocating to use this to make one of these. All right, I'm going to let some people come in, just kind of like, we'll begin with everybody's questions. I was out last week just celebrating my daughter's completion of the grade. Spending some early time with her in this early vacation. But today I had to leave her. I had to leave her because I had to come here. Can't do it 2 weeks in a row. We have a lot to build on. So let people check in. I see the nice hundreds. That's peace. You know, anyone has since I missed a week. Today's session is a little different. I've defined it in the subject matter. You know, in the subject and title. I want to be definitive in this build so that way people understand where I'm coming from. And I want to go through a lot of things, and I hope that people, because it's recorded, people can take certain notes, certain ideas, certain usefulness out of it. You know, I'm working on some plus lessons, but what was very interesting, and I missed last week would have been an almost ideal day. Not quite, but you know, everyone let me know. I kind of want to save it for that particular day, but I didn't even know I had written this. I wrote this like in I wrote this in 2020. A word is bond plus lesson about the concept, the idea, and that I have. I found it. I just was looking through for other things, and I'm working on a book now that I thought was a small autobiography. So I added a lot over the years. I added a lot of other things to it. And the book is about, as far as word count, if I compare it to the word count of my 600-page books, I have two 600-page books. This one would be 30,000. It would be 30,000 pages. So I got a lot of stuff to chop up and stuff. So I've been looking for things, seeing where they fit, what I could use, and now I can separate and make more particular things. Along with the new stuff I'm writing, I don't have to rush everything. But the plus lessons that I'm writing on the 1 to 10, there was another one. To begin being a writer. These are just anyone to be a writer. Anyone. You know, people think I went to some fancy place to be a writer. You know what I mean? Not true. You know, not true at all. I just wrote. You know, and I wrote and I read, and then I read some more, and then I lived some more, and then I read some more. So now, in my life, I continue to have the same pattern. Something that Balthazar Gracian said in his famous book, you know, famous book where we always thought that it would be my favorite Jizza line, but he didn't write it though. He just quoted it, but you know, nobody knows that he quoted it, so I think it's his. But when he said the immortality of my fame is the measure of others' torture, that's actually from the Balthazar Gracian book. It's just, what an amazing line. Like, but in that book, I'm gonna pull it up now because I forgot the name of the book. Gracian says a writer needs three things. He needs to learn from. He needs to do two main things. He needs to study from those who have lived, reading. He needs to actually live. And then he must sit down and actually write, you know? Then he can write. Then he can sit down and actually write, you know? And, you know, this is something, I'm going to include all this in the plus lesson and stuff because I think it's important. I'm going to find it. I'm going to get that name for that book for you guys right now, though. Hopefully the search. If not, I could just look it up on the internet. Okay, The Art of Worldly Wisdom. Right, right. Yeah. I haven't read this book in years, in years. You know, in fact, I haven't read this. I read this. I have the physical book. I read it physically. So my digital copy, I still haven't read it. If anybody's interested in that or any book, some people I have emailed me and stuff like that from the show and prove onward. I'm gonna get you guys. Okay, I just have to, do everything correct. Um, Peace to King Me, Born Rahim. Peace. I love when you put your name in there because I always want to know the righteous name, the true name. Peace to God, Chad. All right, peace to Raz King. Um, yeah, so this session I'm calling. I'll be here to at least 1 hour. Okay, and if I don't get through everything in this 1 hour, then I will continue to get it through. It's very important. I want to be definitive. Um, I want to be definitive, and actually, I want to see if I get the God, just in the cipher here on the chat because he's very important to me even doing this build that I'm about to do. Um, but I can't really find anything here. Okay, I found it. See, it was cool. Yeah. So, as far as that, I did find this word is bond plus lesson. So I have that, and I have two others. I don't know if I'm going to save it for Word is Bond Day, but I'll probably save it for the 11th, just to be timely with that. But I'm just letting everybody know that these are they're on the way. All right, they're on the way. So hopefully I get the God to come in, but I definitely will give him his credit when we get up to that part because he's very instrumental in this. Anybody have any questions about anything? Let me know. Let me know. Anybody have anything that they need? Please email me, okay? Because I will set aside time to do some work over the week, and as the summer progresses, I will have more time to catch up on a lot of things. And if you feel I missed your email, or it's kind of been a long time, you can always forward it to the top. I don't get offended at all. I think that's good. All right. So let me look at these notes here. By the way, I started out doing this just because it's not cold in here, but there's AC in here, so it's actually a good environment here. I used to spend summers here, just always cold, or in the winter, and always hot in the summer. And they've managed it really nice. You know what I mean? They've managed it really nice. So I'm going to go through some current events. I'm going to start immediately with the show and prove my thoughts on it. You know what I'm saying? Correct zone. Peace. I don't know who you are. I never seen you here. So, I try to treat everyone like a student in the classroom. So if there's anything that you want to ask, anything that you want to share, anything you want me to go into, self-elevation, peace to the God, But again, if you see the name of this session, what did I call it? I called it a Juneteenth Blackness Build. Right? Going to build on current events as it relates to the blackness of the brown, and also all the pathetic anti-Sunez cheerleaders, because there's a lot of those. You know what I mean? And that's a good thing too. You know what I mean? Let's do something here though. I want to begin with the show and prove. A lot of people didn't attend the show and prove, so I think it might be vital to talk about it for a minute. I got there early. No, No, incorrect. That's an incorrect description. I got there on time. Show and proof starts at 2 p.m. and I got there a little bit after, maybe 15 after, coming all the way from Sunez Allah, Staten Island. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I have never cared about numbers, numbers of who's who and what's what. I care about the quality. However, though, as just a person and part of this nation, wanting to see my family and my brothers, my sisters, it was kind of a small event, small number, um, and so I was disappointed in that. I'm just being honest, though. I was disappointed I didn't get to see all my brothers, all my sisters that I would expect. Like people I didn't know. There were young people that were there that I had not seen. Young people that greeted me, that they watched these videos, and some of the things that these young gods said to me were really beautiful, beautiful, positive thoughts. And I'm honored. I'm honored that that what I'm sharing here is worthwhile. You know what I mean? Because if there's one thing that I do is to make sure that it is worthwhile. Now, this is important to this blackness build. That's why everything I'm talking about, this current events, we're starting with show and prove. That's a current event that happened, And the main God that I needed to be in here, King Kamal, is in here. Peace to the God, King Kamal. You know what I mean? You know why you're here, because I want to say it as soon as he got in the room. I wasn't thinking about doing this build. I'm gonna tell you something. I have very few people throughout these years. So my life changed, and that was me. My enlightenment told me this. He told me this. He told me this when he was teaching me, and he knew that he was teaching me now, not just to be one of the gods of this nation, but he was teaching me to teach here. And he said that now that you teach here, when you start teaching here, understand this, God. It's going to be lonely in a lot of ways. Not really going to be able to go to people for help. You're going to be able to, you're going to have to be the person that people go to for help. My brothers in the nation, the guys that really know, spend that time with me developing martial arts, in this music thing, outside, building outside of the nation, seeing me build in the street, in the ciphers I go to. They don't really know me for going to them to ask for help or things like that. You know what I mean? Or just a helping hand, a rock to lean on. You know what I'm saying? So I live my life as if I live my life. I don't need that. I won't use that. I was building with one of the gods, and he's instrumental in this build today because he had very positive challenges. I mean by positive challenges, he wasn't insulting, but it was positive challenges. So he was challenging a lot of things. I'll go through some of them because it's important to this build. But he asked me about a quote. I'm starting with the general ideas and show and prove and this idea. He asked me, how do I do it? How do I continue to build this way and continue to do stuff and just not be torn down by people not really building? The 85 still 85 at extreme levels, and it's almost like we grew up. Maybe now we're the older gods. You know what I'm saying? And the world is still like this. You know what I mean? Well, first of all, right? We look at the world like this. I saw it a long time ago, right? And I saw it a long time ago because I had the honor of being around a lot of legends, you know what I mean? In this nation. Infinite Al Jamal, Dumar, my enlightenment, of course, now is me saving knowledge. The list goes on and on. Freedom, Papa Wu, right? And I had reckoned a long time ago that it would be completely egotistical. Let's say that I'm still shooting for it, but it'd be totally egotistical to expect and one day look back and say, I did all this. Why isn't everything changed? for the better. I mean, I find that I immediately saw how, personally, how that would be very egotistical, illogical, and all of that. That's just not the way it should. And I told the God, the revolution, the revolution doesn't happen unless the people are involved. So the people's mindsets have to be involved and then engaged. There are many moments in history where the people have been revolutionized in a mentality, but then yet they don't actualize. And we go back to where we were. It doesn't push forward. They see it, they understand it, they agree with it, they see that it ought to be, and in many respects see that it must be. But they just can't get there. They can't get there. You know what I mean? And this is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult to accept. I haven't taken time, and I also think it would be kind of pompous because it would take a lot of looking outside of myself and outside of this reality to say what is the absolute problem with this revolution. I like to spend my time thinking, what are the problems with the way that I share and work on that? Am I fit to be a revolutionary? Or am I in the proper shape, mentally, physically, right? These are the things that I care about. And I told the God a certain quote that I've been writing a long time. I broke my phone recently. I had to get a new one. But it was in there, a quote. But now it's something that I just say all the time to myself. But there's a Sherlock Holmes quote from the novel. And they used it in some of the shows because I enjoy that character. I enjoy the way he does the knowledge and exposes. It's a 5% story. You know what I mean? He does the knowledge and exposes your whole life, and just looking at the way you dressed, and the details. That's doing the knowledge. Like that's the whole character. So how are we not supposed to be have appeal to that? At least I think that's how I explain it away, right? But I watch a lot of Sherlock Holmes programs. I saw the one with Lucy Liu. I mean, it's worth watching just for that, right? But I saw the BBC one, which was incredible. That's wow. I saw the movies, but I don't remember them with Downey Jr. I gotta watch them again. My brother has them, so I've got access to all this stuff. But the point being, there's a quote, and I read the novel this year, the Sherlock Holmes novel, the main one. I didn't get this quote. I didn't know it was in the novels. I actually saw it in the program. And it said that work is the antidote of sorrow. You see, in my personal life, whether, it gives you humility that someone could say that let's be real, be intimate with someone, a woman, and they say that they love you and they would spend their entire life with you and be down for this revolution and have it in my hand, have it happen in my reality. I could say on varying levels, at least twice, maybe another time too, but definitely twice. And they ended up, the results are my two daughters, right? But to see that after a while, the revolution doesn't lead to the day to day. We will continue to do this day to day. It withers away. And what was once love was just a massive attraction to the magnetic. We're not talking about, and I'm not talking about some years, I'm talking about many years, over a decade, twice. So I liken this to the overall perspective of revolution, that we could share this knowledge. And listen, when you're around these elders, they share this knowledge intimately. Intimately. When I was learning with Knowledge Mia and these other elders that I mentioned, they would be here with me all night. I would fall asleep and they would send me home. Wake me up, send me home. You know what I mean? But when they imparted this knowledge, when they saw, this is when they really embraced me, they imparted this knowledge like an ancient scroll, something to be cherished, that it must be imparted the same way to others, especially those that truly see it, those that go past just the, you know, they go past the teachings of civilization, right? The awareness of the outside world and its oppression. Righteousness, many of the most important and mandatory right ways to live as rules and regulations imposed upon the self, right? But the deeper than those who seek and are ready for the knowledge of self. The knowledge of self. You know what I mean? It was imparted in the most intimate matters. People go that we're a family because we got the knowledge. No, you're family because of the way that the knowledge was shared to you, the way that it was coupled, with understanding of the said individual, the way my enlightener, knowledge me, coupled it with his understanding and shared it me like it was something special to behold. And that the only way that I would be able to honor it, though, was to live it out. And by some grace, if so be it that I could do this, I must do this because share it with others in this special way. Share it with others in this special way. I don't know if everyone that got the knowledge of self was given this knowledge this way. They were given this knowledge in a way where it was egotistical. It was in a recruitment level. It was in a way of saying, if you bear witness that the black man is God, that means that you're actually bearing witness that I am God. And if you don't become God, at least to the very least, you will be submitting to the reality that I am God and thus over you. Well, it wasn't given that. It wasn't given that way to me. I tell you, it was given to me in a way that it was a life or death situation. Not life and death mine, not life and death theirs, but to all humanity. You know what I mean? To the way that humanity can care for itself. Give me a minute here. My little one is actually texting me that she found Rush Hour. She didn't know that I told her that my brother bought it for me. He bought in his collection. He bought the 3 Rush Hours because I told him you got to get some Jackie Chan up in here, in the collection. You know. But so Peace good. You said to make knowledge born, I'm dealing with humility of my ego in the workplace. It's at a point where I must add my knowledge to the cypher because it will make things better. They know that I know who, what, where, and how. That's peace, God. Peace to God, Malik. You know, this, humility is very, very important, though. And this idea of what is revolution shouldn't be something that it is based on what we do, but it is also based on the people taking the baton. We cannot make it easy for them. This is why I've never advocated obsessive recruitment. Recruitment makes it easier. Do these said things and you are a 5%er. Behave in this such and such a way. You know what I mean? I've never been that way, so it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Um, but concluding that particular thought about show and prove, I was only I was only disappointed in show and prove just because you know, it's a Sunday, and Sunday I spend it writing and reading, um, reading simple stuff too. I usually have already read my page counts, which is 300, way before the end of the week. So I usually read a couple of comic books, you know, just enjoyment stuff, you know, try to watch some movies, work on books, work on music, you know what I mean? Um, and I wanted to go over there and see family, and I didn't get to see everybody that I was hoping to see, you know, on a good thing. But everybody that I did see was a lot of love, and I did see some brothers, elders that I do love, as expected, and so that was really nice, you know. Um, but here's the thing, you know. What was interesting about Show and Prove, though, right? And it gets to this blackness thing because I have a lot of, I had one well-meaning, absolutely well-meaning thought about a student disappointed with me because I didn't express the kinship, the empathy. It's a good word, empathy, with the FBA movement because they're really trying to speak to, um, you know, the reality of what people going through, the oppression, how there's, you know, the Black American is still the last on the totem pole as far as especially the mentality toward what people think of them. They think lowly of them, etc., right? Um, the lack of reparations, right? All of these things, right? Um, and it feels like a double down, but I always immediately say that I cannot attack things emotionally, that it is impossible to relate to. It is very dangerous when we relate to ourselves via the oppression that we suffer. That'll never be acceptable. You know what I mean? See, when you start to see yourself as a black man, then you start to see yourself through the lenses of the things that you have created and the wonderful things you do. But when you see yourself through the trials of continuing to be a black man only, then now you're defining yourself by the oppression that you go through. This isn't universal. It takes you out of the diaspora. And this is a problem, though. My whole work and my whole career has been about seeing the entire diaspora. My very first work was helping that I ever got paid for in hip hop was in the New Yorkers from the hip hop zone because that was Dr. Raquel Rivera's PhD thesis. Open up that book, you're going to see my honorable name, right? In there in the very first pages. And every single time I'm quoted in there, I speak about the black and the brown as a black diaspora. This mentality was in me of the complete spectrum of the original man before I got knowledge of self, before I understood lyrics in a rap song. You know, I still was burgeoning though. I was hardly a journalist of note. I think what made me different in the beginning of my journalistic career was that I had a lot of fury, and journalists didn't write with that kind of fury. They were usually from the formal school. If they wanted to describe blackness, which they did very well, many of them, they did it from the Gay Talese school of journalism, where you wrote a novelized nonfiction, you know, where you novelized the reality. Um, and so I didn't do it that way. From day one, I was writing on hip hop as if I am living that. Here are my perspectives. You know, so it always was different. And I honed it, I developed it. But this idea of the Black diaspora was always in me. And it just became confirmed when I got knowledge of self and what the Father taught us. I'm going to start going through these notes about this blackness thing. Okay? Anybody has any questions, so I will not lose on a tangent because I can easily build from there. Okay? Before we go into that, I want to talk about the fraudulence of the leaders that people follow. We follow things emotionally. And I don't care what anybody says. The bulk of people that were pro-FBA, I'm going to say 90% of them. I'm going to say that the majority of the so-called 5%ers that were getting at me in some kind of way because I'm not heralding something enough. Okay? I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to say this many times in this session. An overt submission of empathy is what people expect. Many of the Black Americans that are talking about FBA on that angle, especially many of the people that I know is 5%, they are expecting a submission through empathy. I'm going to describe that again, because I got a lot of ways of detailing this, and there will be signature notes. A submission of empathy means I will empathize with the Black American so much as the leader and the vanguard of the oppressed that I don't even have a wherewithal to even acknowledge the valor and the validity of my own originality. And I don't mean originality in creativity of making a work. I mean originality in my blackness. It's an indirect. It's an indirect. It has become an indirect oppression Olympics. I've never stood for it. I won't stand for it. I won't stand for it. Here's why. Because if people know my curriculum, and there's enough of my curriculum that people, and enough of my works out there that people deserve, ought to do their own research. Like I said, I had one brother, again, I'm not going to mention names, so well-meaning, but in a conversation with my student, he said, Sunez, do I really have to go through everything that you did, the knowledge, to not see, to then see that you have been building about this and always was building about the reality of the Black American? I said, that's part of the curriculum. We can't know about this nation. Forget about everything else. This nation, 5% nation, God's and earth, without knowing Black American history from the point of the father, back through New York history, back all the way to the entire country's history of the Black American. And you can't do that again and be efficient, proper, honorable if you don't do that going back with the Nation of Islam as well, because that's important to know as well. You know? He said, I have to do the knowledge. Now, I'm a teacher. I'm an enlightened Benny. And they asked me, do I have to do the knowledge to everything to speak about someone and say they didn't say something in the public world? Let me rewind it again. So the question is, do I have to do the knowledge to someone to say that they didn't say something or speak on it in the public world if I didn't do the knowledge to everything that they said in the public world, in the public forums? That's what we do. We do the knowledge. We don't make knowledge born unless we do the knowledge. And I'm saying it again. All the cheerleaders out there that are anti-Sunez, whatever, you cannot speak about me until you do the knowledge. And unlike the poultry post, the pathetic lifestyles, the insufficient realities, if you want to say Sunez didn't say something, you got to do the knowledge to a long history of work. You can't say I didn't say it. You're going to have to quote me and give me the particular date when you say I quoted something and said something incorrectly or insufficient. It may be found. I may have said something incorrect, insufficient, but you have to quote me first before you can do it. Because we do the what? The knowledge. And yes, Julia, this has the hallmarks of a victim mentality, and I won't stand for it. Now let's go back a little bit with the Black American, right? I didn't answer to God. You know, I let's talk about empathy. Let's talk about perspectives, and let's really get at, because if you have been doing the knowledge to me through all the videos shared on Allah School in Mecca, if you have been doing the knowledge to me through all these long sessions in this channel that I've been doing since 2020, even though I've been teaching since the year 2000, and I'm gonna say this: if you don't see, man, if you don't see the compassion, the empathy, the heart that I put into this, I don't know what you're watching. If you need to go and ask around, and let's say you do that, but just take this in perspective here. Let's take this in perspective. For over half my life, let me say that again. For over half my life, I have given this Thursday evening to share all that I know and all that I can to build forums for anyone that is willing to learn. And I'm here again. I don't want to be judged by the way that I cry. I don't want to be judged by the way that I am angered. I don't want to be judged by speaking on the individuals that did me dirty. Because if we did that, some of these Black Americans, some of you that are upset about this, 5%ers or not, you've never even been in situations where the white man has screwed you. You don't even have those situations. You don't even have that reality. I have that, and I also have the Black American. I've been in this industry, this music industry. I've been screwed by black, brown, and white. Black, brown, and white. Many of all. And I will not be remembered, or people focus on those things. And so they make narratives about my reality. I was on a post though, I shared a post though, it said that our nation doesn't advocate any criminality. And I got to get into it where somebody says, well, we can't make people do what they do. No, we can't. But I can tell you that you're not in this fucking nation if you're doing crime. And all the ones that are in this nation that do crime and then teach and think that they can do both because they've done it for so long, I don't care what you say, you're not right and exact. You just do a lot of things right. You know the right way of living, not right and exact. And what do I mean by that? Because as we go along, though, criminality does not always equate with legality. So we know the type of criminality I'm talking about is what? Robbing, stealing, selling poisons, though. You sell some type of good that you would never use, you're doing devilishment. You're selling some type of drug that you know is harmful, you're doing devilishment. You stealing and robbing, you're doing devilishment. And take that from somebody that's in the low lives. because I went into this organization and they knew that I do not do that. And the righteousness and the mentality that I bring was welcomed and embraced. Salute. Salute the low lives, right? 2 L's, right? 2 L's up. You know what I mean? Peace to Rakim Supreme Sunez Allah. Peace to Thurston House Third. Right? Peace to all my brother lows. You know? And sisters. Current events, though. I want to continue and talk about really quickly. And it seems like I'm all over, but it'll all come together. And that's why I don't have to worry about it. Today's Juneteenth. Juneteenth is something that all original people should be aware of. You know, in the beginning, I didn't know what it was. Just like a lot of people that aren't Black American, that aren't from the South also. You could be Black American and not know about this stuff too. I met some that they didn't know about this. You know what I mean? They may have been far removed from the Southern, their family in the South or whatever, right? And all we saw was like celebrations and stuff. And, you know, my militant revolutionary mind, I'm like, man, what are we celebrating now? We celebrating the white man freeing you? No, that's not what it was. It's about the realization and the fact that even though someone can say that you are free, you have to actively demand the freedom. You have to complete the reality. And that it still is demanding of completion. Juneteenth is something that I am down with, but not as a celebration. I'm not going to be the one to be celebrating all that kind of shit. I don't even advocate the parades and all that kind of shit. It's everybody's decision to do that, and that's what they do. But I think what is mandatory is that all of us original people need to think about the steps and the realities of our freedom. And that means that Juneteenth is a holiday that is not really best suited for celebration, although some will, and it'll be suited for them. But for everyone, it is demanding commemoration. Celebration is optional and understandable. But for all of us, though, it demands some type of commemoration, meaning some kind of thought in mind. Some time taken to think about this, right? You know? Mark Dub, Freedom Now, Max Roach, Superior album. Superior. You know? What was her name? I'm forgetting Abby something. Beautiful singer on that too. On that album. One of the great female jazz singers. Abby Lincoln. You know, Abbey Lincoln. You know? Thank you, Ma. I looked up and saw the Lincoln when you saying it though. I had to, you know. I just love the way her voice soars. It's you know, it's beautiful. You know, thanks for reminding me because I haven't heard her in a while. You know what I mean? I am obsessed with listening to Ella Fitzgerald. I think Ella Fitzgerald is the greatest singer of all time. When we talk about the GOAT, able to do everything, and I think if you could do everything in jazz, that means you do everything. A master of the ballad, master of the scat, master of the up-tempo, mid-tempos, master of the freestyling. You know, look at her famous live performance of Mac the Knife, where she made up the whole verses. And just as, you know, people always say, oh, the Billie Holiday is a super GOAT. Should be anybody's GOAT. I will never argue. But we only accept singers that have a sadness to and a blues sadness. I think there was a beauty in the blues, and I think that Ella captures that perfectly. But I digress, though. I digress. You know what I mean? Eric Cook, you asked why you disagree with supreme understanding. What is supreme understanding? Well, what do you mean by that? I don't understand that question. Okay, you have to explain that a little bit more. I don't know what that means. And I know a God named Supreme Understanding, and we've disagreed on certain things, but you know what I mean. Very little. Let me tell you what I do agree with Supreme Understanding. I agree with. Um, I commend him because he's one of the few people that were right and exact and on the ball publishing essential works. When COVID hit, he was on point. He was on point. One of the few, and I have to commend that immediately if I go backwards. I think he was right when he told me the Knowledge of Self anthology that he was the lead editor of and publisher of, and I was just a co-editor. That it should be just a introductory book and simple. I don't necessarily. At the time, he may have changed. I don't. We had differing views on how the brown and the yellow were made. I guess dispersed, come about. I'm not gonna go into detail there because then it would state what he says. It's been years, and I don't really, you know what I'm saying. I also disagree, and this is not something that's disagreeable, but it just wasn't my lane to just do scholarly books about what I thought was this knowledge. Peace to the God. Indeed, grab a seat, brother. Grab a seat, brother. All right. You know, what's your name, brother?
King Kwali.
King Kwali. I met you before, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's peace.
I decided I do want you to be my teacher.
That's peace, God. I'm honored. So we'll get there. I have a very special lecture I'm doing here. I even wrote it here. I called it Juneteenth Blackness. A lot of the ideas of blackness, my experience in this, and where I stand, because I get challenged a lot, and I'm going through some of these things. Maybe these things will be of worth. Please interject this whenever you feel the need. You know what I mean? With Supreme Understanding, that disagreement has not been fleshed out because it was years ago, and I don't want to go into it because I don't even remember it. The other one was the publishing. I didn't work with him further because in my heart, I didn't want to share my understanding of this knowledge of self as the package of my published works. I also had a more avant-garde way of looking at what I was writing, and I was writing things that they're very creative. Even my Peace Course book is written creatively. It isn't written scholarly only. So a bulk of it is written in a very creative fashion, something that wasn't really in the purview of what he was doing or has done. So that's about it. You know what I'm saying? Word is bond, and bond is life. When I look at Supreme, and I saw him at the show and proved that, and I was positive as always. What he does is absolutely necessary. You know what I'm saying? I just knew that what I was writing, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to make creative works. As you can see, I write mostly about music. That's not his lane. That's not what he was publishing. That's not what he was doing. You know what I mean? That's pretty much it. You know, we disagreed on some things in the Wisdom Build degree on Black, Brown, and Yellow Seed, and I'm gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna leave it like that because I don't know where he's at. I never brought it up. I don't even build with him on that. You know what I'm saying? And there were other things that is really not for the public that because he does his business. Because once we make a book and we sell it, as he and I have done, we have a different way of doing business. His, I will admit, much more effective fiscally than mine. But we make our choices how we're going to do that, right? You know, but those are differences. They're not necessarily disagreements, though. So now I'm not even in that lane anymore, right? I don't know if that answers the question. You know what I'm saying? And to segue back into what I'm talking about here, right? To end about the Juneteenth, I was saying that Juneteenth to me, at first I didn't see it, I didn't know about it. You know what I mean? And a lot of Black Americans I knew didn't know about it either. I guess we didn't, they weren't in touch with the Southern roots and things like that. And being in the revolutionary mindset, I was like, what we doing celebrating? What, the white man gave you freedom and you celebrate? That was like what it looks like when you do it. But it's so much more than that. And as people get to articulate it more, it becomes more than that. And I said that I think, this is my personal understanding, I think that it's something that can be celebrated, and ought to, if you feel it, celebrate it, but absolutely all original people should definitely commemorate it. And what I mean by commemoration, it means that we take a moment to think about this history, and we take a moment to think about how we get freedom, what are the stages of freedom, what needs to be in place for freedom. Because remember, one of the main things about Juneteenth is that they were let go free, but they didn't know. You know what I'm saying? And that whole thing about you may not know about your freedom. You don't know about your freedom. And so you're not free until you're free in the mind. And even when they knew about their freedom, the whole point was that they had to actualize it. They had to force the issue. You know what I mean? They can't just say, we're free, you got to let us free. No, they had to take certain steps to say, listen, this is going to be advocated. Because remember, you had to get the soldiers in there advocated. And that has been it's really important to commemorate it. I think it's great because it shows you that Black American history has been continued to be one of, we can't just say it, can't just put it into law. We got to force the issue, right? They didn't desegregate, they didn't integrate things until it was forced. You know what I'm saying? So whether we argue whether integration should have happened, right? All that shit, right? We know that, it took away a lot of our business, shit like that, right? We know the pros and cons of integration, right? But even that didn't happen unless it was forced. You know what I mean? It's forced, The 85% don't accept, the blind, deaf, and dumb don't accept, they don't accept the law because it is righteous. They accept the law because it is enforced. And that's why, I was reading this book. I finished this book by Jason Stanley. He wrote 2 books about fascism. This second one, this newest one he wrote, is called Erasing History. It's a good book, pretty decent book, short read. Again, anybody wants it, I could email it to. And he talks about these kind of things here. You know what I mean? This idea of, fascism controlling history, controlling narratives, all of these things. And it's kind of relevant to the Juneteenth and stuff, It's kind of relevant because this idea of the law being righteous does not necessarily make it something that is going to be adhered to. The law that is written by governments is dealt with by enforcement. We could go through history, and in this book he talks about the worth of ancient I don't know, it's just a crude word. There's a word for it, but classical literature. I'm saying the word classical because I'm referring to Greek and Roman, and to me, I don't like using that word because they're just part of it. To me, classical literature, when I say it, I'm immediately referring to ancient Kemet works, the works of ancient China and Japan. You know what I'm saying? I'm not referring to the Greek, but I also think that all original, if we get past the original, that those are worth reading as well, but that the conflicts of man are in all of these books. So if you ever, I got into it because of martial arts. So I learned Chinese Kung Fu. So I started my Qigong, and you don't know, my Qigong isn't a Chinese guy. You know what I mean? My Qigong was a brother that trained a lot of the other gods, my peers, my age group, and they brought me along. He's really an honorary 5%er to us, but he's a Black American, Black man, Qigong Bobby Lee Whitaker. You know what I mean? And when he taught us, though, he taught us to fight. And that's when I got to if he's going to teach us how to fight, I want to see what ancient people did about this mentality. What was their mentality in fighting? Because I was just from the 5% paradigm and things like that, right? So I was just trying to complete the cipher. You know what I mean? So I read the ancient texts, train with the gods. Turn Seagung Bobby. You know what I mean? And all of these texts had real worth because, like I was saying before about Balthazar Gracian, though, he wrote in The Art of Worldly Wisdom, he wrote that a writer needs to check the past, study the past, which means you got to read. You got to read, then you can't write yet. You got to do another thing. You got to live life. He said, you got to live life. You got to go out there and live, do shit. Then he said, the third part of your life, now you write. He said, study the past, go there. And what was very important is that he said, study shit. Most of our people, right, our lives and stuff, especially in the way it's structured, we go live life, fuck it all up, right? We fuck it all up. Then we start reading shit. So, oh, damn. Look at the way all these other people did that. Yeah. And now we're looking back. We're like, damn, and then you start maybe to write. But I was blessed to have it different because I had a very strict upbringing. So I was in the hood, but I wasn't in the hood. And there was no reason for me to go to the hood. My father lived the street. So he would walk me around, show me the street. So to me, a lot of you young don't see it. I was poor, I didn't have the shoes I wanted, never had no polo. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I felt like if I did those things in the street, I would now be hypocritical. Hypocritical to things my older had said. If you sell drugs, you're hurting somebody's family, though. She would do the whole, branch. Take the whole branch and stretch it out. What happens to that? And then, so a lot of morality was in my head at a very young age. You know what I'm saying? And I'm explaining this, though, because a lot of people don't see. They think I do this very coldly because I'm not crying and dealing with FBA the way that they would like to be dealt with. The way I continue to say that if we relate to our oppression as our badge, that becomes a problem. You know what I mean? Because that's what the God degree and the 1 to 14s, they want us to think that we're all different. And if they treat us differently, as they always do, then we would think that we're all different. The God that just walked in, black seed, right? Black seed, brown seed, dark brown seed, right? You can argue the way you feel like, because if you're around the gods from Medina, right, you'd be black seed, right? Brown seed, right? Medina, elders from Medina call me a brown seed because they also go by the region you come from. So the brown from Caribbean, Latin America, right? And I'm from the Caribbean, right? Right? So they might even see brown seed, right? They would see the Asian as the yellow seed, you know what I mean? But then there's other gods that they see me by my complexion, and unless I get a serious tan, I'm pretty much yellow, brownish yellow, right? In the winter, I'll be mad yellow, right? Yellow seed. Either or, right? Original. Right? But when we get through all this, right, you define yourself by that oppression, then now what happens is the oppression has a value to it. And that was what we weren't supposed to do. Let's put a value on it. And then now you start to look at other people. Well, you're from Jamaica. You're people from Jamaica. They didn't go through what we went through. And now you start to see differences. You know what I mean? Now you start to see, and you take false narratives and you only build by separation. This is why when the FBA movement got into the pseudo scholarship of hip hop, it made no sense to them that a whole diaspora could be being black and all reach many of the same sums. Just like Borinquen, Puerto Rico, has rumba sessions. That's what we call it, rumba sessions, that are named the same thing in Jamaica. Called the same thing. You know what I mean? Same ciphers where they'll have the drums and they'll just be going off. They call it bomba. You add stuff where, you have the panderete, which is it looks like a giant. It looks like a fucking giant tambourine, and you're hitting on it and you're talking about shit. The lyrics are all about what you were talking about. Like shit in the street that just happened, though. You know what I mean? A lot of call and response, right? But you go to Jamaica, same call and response that becomes the toasting, that becomes the dance hall, all of that. And people go, oh, look, they didn't learn anything until they saw the American. Listen, they learned so much from the Black American with the R&B. But a lot of people don't understand that the Jamaican wasn't recording their own music. So we're assuming they didn't have any music prior to the 1950s. You know what I mean? They didn't record. And a lot of times when you talk about recording, people always want to talk about things financially when it's talking about millions of records. And they apply it to everything. But when people don't record it all, it has nothing to do with the quality of the record. It often has to do, or the quality of the music in the area. It has to do with the people that record. They're saying, not going to make money with that. And it was Jamaicans themselves that were saying, I'm not going to make money with that shit. You know what I mean? Because when they put on the radio, they're just getting American stations. They're like, who's going to hear us do shit? Yo, the beginnings of Jamaican music in general is almost identical to the way hip hop began. You got DJs in the street. You got competitions in the street. Different DJs. You got what people don't want to admit about the Bronx, because the Bronx ain't one place. It's huge. You got DJs everywhere, competing DJs. DJs arguing about, nah, we did this shit first. No, we did this like this first. You know what I mean? You got all that, almost equal parallel, almost equal parallel. And the shit was rhyming. And so we don't see the Black diaspora. So then the FBA is separating, that mentality is separated. So they can't see like, yo, they was rhyming, right? I always have to say this because I love salsa. The salsa, the first urban genre of New York City, solely created there. Outgrowth of son, Cuban son, S-O-N. As the Cuban and Puerto Rican musicians start to play with jazz musicians, they start to add improvisation, and that becomes salsa, along with the lyrics being more grimy. Salsa lyrics was grimy. They would talk about the street, about the situations they were dealing with, which is something you didn't get in Cuban song. A lot of it was traditional. We love the country, things like that. You know what I mean? But in a song, which became salsa, right, which grows into salsa, the singers are called soneros, like the way MCs aren't called rappers. They're called soneros, not salsa singers or salseros, like they say now. Mark Anthony's a salsero. He just sings the romance shit. The lyrics are about romance, lovey-dovey, good stuff, fun shit, party, love. It's good stuff. It's fun. You know what I mean? I saw Mark Anthony live back in '97 in MSG. It was a lot of fun. You know, it was awesome. So those who were there, Papo Pepin on conga. I don't know. He was dope. But the soneros, though, used to sing the lyrics of the song, love, whatever subject it was, but then they have a call and response. So the chorus guys say, vámonos pa'l monte, whatever they say. The sonero says a line. Then they say the same chorus line again. And the sonero has to rhyme to the line that he just said before. And he has to keep doing it. Chorus, rhyme, and you're rhyming to the opposite bar. You know, the bar that you just said before. That's what a sonero does, and they challenge each other. I lost it because it was VHS time. I used to have a VHS of Cheo Feliciano. He was from Ponce. That's where my family's from. Just like Lavo and a lot of legends. Cheo Feliciano was in Cuba with the soneros of Cuba, and he was battling with them. Some hip hop shit. So it doesn't mean that the Caribbean made up MC. It means that it was the perfect spot, that the Black diaspora was there, that it was all in tune. You see? And when we start to think that we're all different, we fall under things. Most important thing, if we continue on into this lesson, you know what I mean? Be careful with that word goddess, Cook. Be careful with that word goddess, okay? Remember, the word goddess, we don't use that in this nation. If a sister calls herself a goddess, I don't be correcting her. That's a good level, right? She don't see herself as a bitch. That's wonderful. But in our nation, technically, we say the earth because goddess would imply, because we're technical, we're scientists with it. She's not a version of man. God is the black man. That's you. Your black woman is not just a version of you, a feminized version of you. She's the earth. You see? So there's a depth that we're trying to show them that they are unique. You know what I mean? And that they are interdependent with us. We are interdependent with them. But anyway, I digress to this, right? Because it's a very serious session. I've gone on for over an hour here just building. Let's have a fun moment here. A fun moment here. And you may use this. You may take a sample of this. Let's have a fun moment here. Sunez never says fun moment because we're talking about Sunez doesn't have compassion, doesn't have heart. Let's have a fun moment, maybe even a laugh out loud moment. Let's have a fun moment for Lord Jamal. Okay? And have this fun moment because people think that they could talk shit about Sunez. And it's all fighting without fighting, like Bruce Lee said, which is really quoting the Tao, fighting without fighting. You know what I mean? They want to call me out. They want to say they can exile me. Fighting without fighting, though. Because let me tell you something. In my whole career in hip-hop, Source, Vibe, Double XL, Stress Magazine, Hip Hop DX, One Love Magazine. People don't even know these magazines. Hook.com. I can't even remember all the others. The ones that I did. Level of Revolt, the ones I made. Our Swords. OG Press Magazine I was part of. A litany. My own books, whatever it is. I never sold out. I never sold out the music, never sold out my integrity. Never told anybody that music was good when I thought it was a piece of shit. People that I thought that they were a piece of shit, I always told them to their face, though, I don't appreciate the music, I don't like it, and I gave lots of reasons why. You know what I mean? That's why at the Sean Price wake, when Action Bronson was coming our way, Wise Ruler, and all the other gods, they were like, oh shit, here we go. Because they know I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them, listen, Action Bronson, it's a pleasure to meet you, but I don't care for your music, and I have not written well about you. If that degenerates into something else, that's on you, because this is Sean P's wake, and I don't want to fuck it up. I love Sean P. That was my man. I love him. You know, remembered imperfection, Sean Price, one of the great men. Wouldn't let me write about him. Refused to let me write about him. Would continue to introduce me to other people to write about. You know what I mean? Introduce me to Napoleon the Legend, who I've known for all these years, over what is it? Over almost 15 years. You know, 13, 15, whatever it is. Almost 15 years. You know what I mean? One of the great MCs of this era. You know what I mean? Like that, doing things like that, you know? Could have ate up all the press. Could have ate it all up. You know what I mean? Could have had him in hip-hop. No, he didn't care. He didn't give a shit. You know? Integrity. Why am I bringing this up? Fun moment. Everybody get your chuckles on. Right? Everybody get your chuckles on because people want to talk shit, but they're the ones out there selling out. They're the ones with their hat in their hand, though. Hey, boss, hey, can we go? You know what I mean? When I left the Source, I said I'd never go back, and I never went back. Because I don't sell out, and I don't do music, and if I'm not happy writing, I leave. But the Source, when I left the Source, though, they all shook my hand because they knew they respected my choice. So much so that other people, they know who they are. I was able to write them a letter of recommendation and got them into the Source. That's how you leave a job, though. You know what I mean? Say, I don't want to do none of your work, though. But I still get somebody else that want to do that shit. Get him a check. You know? But I love this music. I love this music. I love the integrity. You know what I mean? Yo, imagine a music and a culture, an art form, where originality and creativity is mandatory. Mandatory. Not some shit where like, oh, you know what I mean? Sports not mandatory. You know what I mean? You know, if I go into the league and I do every single move like Michael Jordan and it works, and I get 30 points a game, nobody's going to get mad about it. They're going to call me the second coming of Michael Jordan. They're not going to go, he's a freaking biter. You know what I mean? No. I mean, you know what I mean? I go into baseball and I do the whole Juan Soto shuffle. You know the whole shit he does? And I hit like 50 home runs. Nobody's going to tell me, he bit off Juan Soto. No, I learned. It's okay because he learned from him. You know what I mean? But I go in there and I rhyme exactly like what? Sean Price? Right? And I make records that, they might sound good. They'll be like, nah, I'm not feeling that shit. Not feeling that shit. It's over. A very rare art form. You know what I mean? Very rare. And I always thought it was beautiful, and I never ruined that integrity. But why am I saying that? Because certain people in this nation decided to believe the pseudo receipts of him regarding hip hop, regarding other things, right? Take note of this guy. Respecting that because it fit the narrative of the Black American. We made this and they're trying to steal this. Brown people are trying to steal this, that. And you paint us with a brush that's wide. You make big mistakes. You know what I'm saying? You make big mistakes. Okay? Because nobody's monolith. You speak to a Black American here, trust me, I will find you one down south that doesn't agree with anything that he just said. That large paintbrush is all bullshit. You can't take some Miami white Cuban, you know what I mean, and think that that'll work to describe the mentality of my brother Infinite Mind, who happens to be Cuban. Not the same. Not the same. God would acknowledge himself with some average Cuban. You know what I mean? That monolith brother. But look, it fit the narrative of people trying to take away our things. Let's fit the narrative. Brown people trying to take away things. And I laughed initially because in the history of this, I want to be definitive. That's why I'm doing this. Right? I'll be able to complete this in 50 minutes. We go outside there and I look back on my history and I'm like, yo, I'm the one that sacrificed for and lost all the money. You know what I mean? In the industry, the music industry, especially with hip hop, it was the brown that was denied access to the industry. I know, I got that documented. Prince Powerful, first solo MC on Interscope Records. At the time, same time that Tupac was signed. Right? Fat Joe telling me directly. This is before Miami, Fat Joe. Right? Telling me. They didn't want him to do hip hop. They wanted him to do freestyle. Imagine this motherfucker singing and dancing. That's sad. Right? Q Unique, a very, very light-skinned, pass for white Puerto Rican looking guy. You know what I mean? Right? They didn't want him in the industry. Destroy of Arsonist as well. Right? Destroy, Q Unique, Arsonist. Totally the same thing. Right? And a whole host of other people that people may not know and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Said if they look Puerto Rican, if you can't pass for Black American, not signing you. You know what I mean? Can't get in this thing. You got to do something else. It's not in the proper market, niche market, target market, whatever marketing bullshit word that they use to constrict the market. Right? Well, you guys fell for it. Was it talk shit? No apologies, no nothing. I told the brother I know. I know him for years. Let's just say his works, I bought all of them. My works, didn't even share a Facebook post. You know what I'm saying? This is what we're talking about. Imbalanced support. But this is the same one that's telling me, you know what? Lord Jamal's right about these things that we're talking about. I said, listen, he hasn't been right about anything. Mathematics, the earth, hip hop. And I got the credentials. I was the one there. Oh, but he got receipts and stuff. Didn't Malcolm X talk about sound bites? Malcolm X was one of the first to talk about sound bites. He said, don't believe the media what they say about me, because they take a piece of it and make it sound like I said something else. They talked to Charlie Chase. He goes, oh, look, yeah, there wasn't that many of us Puerto Ricans doing anything. And that. First of all, he came in later and he was doing a particular element, DJ. Was he around for all the b-boying? Was he around for the breaking? Was he around for the stuff that was going on in Williamsburg Bushwick, the Apache line, right? Because as I said, every time we go through the history of the anger and violence and confrontation that is in b-boy, all that shit, all they keep showing me is smiley face dancers from the 1920s and 30s, though. That shit don't cut it. You know what I mean? I forgot the brothers, the legendary dance brothers of the 20s. They did every athletic feat you could do in movies. They were the best. They didn't rhyme angrily. You know what I mean? And the whole rocking comes from the Brooklyn Boricuas rocking. That was before hip hop. It's all documented. And when they document it, they quote the parts that they want and they skip the other parts. You know what I mean? Because I read the books that they say they used. I read all of those books before I read yours. I know what you didn't. I know what you ignored in the source material. You know what I'm saying? Okay? Because we could do the same thing. We say Allah said that the black man is God. And so you're not God because you're Jamaican. Or you're not God because you're Puerto Rican. You need to go to the source material. Because I didn't read it from you or get it from you. I got it from the elders. Now, I didn't get it from Lord Jamal telling me that Puerto Ricans and such don't belong in this nation, that they should keep their place, though. I haven't found a motherfucker that could put me in my place yet. And certainly not going to do it here. It's actually going to be the reverse. But I digress, and that's the fun moment, right? Not fun for him, though. As we see a sellout in progress. But he's been selling out a long time, right? But I bring that up, though, to continue the fact that where are our sources? How do we validate a source? How do we validate the worth of what somebody's saying? The reason I mention that Charlie Chase is because Charlie Chase was egged on in these interviews to say how blacks are the only ones. But by the time he comes in the game, black Americans are being gatekeepers. That's a fact. People don't want to admit that. They're being gatekeepers. They're preserving what is being successful at that moment. And that's why they got knocked out of breaking. We were breaking from the near beginning and got knocked out because we made moves that weren't being done. And it's the black B-boys that can get quoted on that. Before the nigger twins changed their name to the Supreme Twins or something like that, because you can't just keep calling yourself that. They're documented in literature of the 90s and beyond saying the Latinos came, they didn't call them Latinos, they said Hispanics or the brown people, Puerto Ricans, they came and they changed the whole thing by going down on the floor. Last I checked, though, down on the floor is the signature move of what breaking is. Right? We ask anybody what breaking is. A casual or an intense hip fan, listener, anything, hip hop aficionado. You say breaking is when you get on the floor, you do that shit on the floor. These guys are saying the brown people came up with it. You know what I mean? I digress. They don't want to show this. They don't do any of the research. Charlie Chase has those one things. What about all of the research I was at where Charlie Chase was saying how he was being gatekept? They were gatekeeping him out, not letting him in. So when he was doing stuff, just like others, it was worthy, but they didn't let him in the game. And he had to force his way in the game. It did help, though, that he had the Cold Crush brothers, the other Cold Crush brothers that were, they were dominating. They were a force, I'm saying all that to say this. I told the God in this station, I say, God, you're going to take my 30-year scholarship and throw that away and say his point is valid because it goes with the boo-hoo, the crime of the FBA, people taking away shit all the time. This is what I'm dealing with. And I'm going to go through this. I'm going to run through this, though, of the shit that is unacceptable. We're not just talking about validating a source. We're talking about a mentality that is being supported here out of convenience. Let's go into it. I saw a post by another God that I know. I'm going to keep it so he sometimes is on here. Me and the God King, we did songs with him. He's got posts where he says, let's read this. Let's read this so we know the mentality of what we're dealing with here. Right? Y'all don't F with us in the real world or in jail, but now you want niggas to ally with y'all in protest. Now it's black and brown unity. F out of our faces with that bullshit. Deal with it. First of all, this is a guy that's not even black American. He's from the Caribbean, just like you, just like me. This is another quote. I'm not telling you quotes from regular 85ers because I be dismissing shit. 85 say shit? I don't give a shit. People know that. I'm like, yo, that's 85 shit. You doing 85 shit. I expect you to do wrong shit. You say 85. People that's 5%. People that want to hold this flag with me. Let's read you another one. Let's read a portion that was highlighted by me by somebody else sharing it. If you came to the country my people built illegally and are still here illegally, get the F out of here ASAP. Huh. Okay. Just think about that for a moment. The hypocrisy in that statement. The country that you built illegally, someone else is not allowed to come here illegally. The hypocrisy in that is that you are admitting there that the law may not always be moral, right? It legally enslaved you, so it was morally wrong to legally enslave you. But yet, it is acceptable to advocate the law by you getting the fuck out based on the law. There's the mentality I had. I had a saint, the brother that wrote that, I didn't know he wrote that when I saw him. He's asking me and showing proof. And yo, if you know who you are, we talk about it. You're asking me what I think about reparations because I might have said black. You think. Again, think. Wisdom, knowledge, right? Wisdom before knowledge. You talking before you did the knowledge. That I said, I'm against reparations. I said, I am against an immediate check and then a dismissal of everything else that should be in place. That we have to look at the logic that a check of money could be devalued, given to everybody, deliberately devalued. How is it devalued? You know what? I'm the one that has a business degree. So I'm going to be a bougie, and I'm going to fall back on that and say, the first thing you learn, though, is the easiest way to devalue dollars is through inflation. Put too much money in a place, the inflation rises. Everybody will get $20,000 checks, though, that buy almost nothing. You see what I'm saying? Because if you get $20,000 checks all in one shot, everybody's going to be big spending immediately. Let's keep it real. 85 going to be big spending immediately. Everything will go up immediately. You know what I mean? The demand will not match the supply. Inflation will happen. That's basic shit. That's basic shit. My call for reparations is a detailed build, but it was resting on the idea of detailed, targeted investment in land. That's why I wanted to start. Specific investments in the people and in the land. Not organizations, investment in the people and in the land. That's all I was saying. That's all I was saying. And the models I was thinking of was Fidel when he took over Cuba. You know what I mean? That's really where I was thinking. And that's why I said not everybody's ready for reparations of that, the real kind, because y'all read about Cuba and y'all get scared for America. This is Black America. They read about Cuba and what Fidel did, they get scared. You know? Talk shit about you ready. You're not ready for shit. I'm talking about the 5% having this mentality. Now listen to this though. Now I found brothers that are Puerto Rican, they say the same shit. They're like, go back to your country, because Puerto Ricans have citizenship. Yeah? Go back to your country. They sound like a damn bunch of buffoons. They're on that bullshit. You know what I mean? But I didn't find no 5% that's supposedly Latino that was saying that shit. They were saying, I'm here. I got my green card. I got my everything. You guys go back Take away. You know why? Because they know better. And here's why. There is, in these so-called 5%, and then everybody in general that's doing this, that's Black American. First off, right? I'm going to tell you something about activism. I know activists. Probably the most famous one that people might know that I know that we could use here in this example is my brother in Motor Technique. I don't know if you ever heard of Motor Technique, right? Real activists, though. We used to have arguments about revolution. I used to talk about diet. I started being vegan at the time that I knew him. I was vegan for a while. And I was like, yo, we gotta eat the right foods. We got this. You know what I mean? He said, no, that's not what he was like. No, we gotta go into Latin America, start shooting things up and take over. He really was about that shit. And Motor Technique is about 1,000% what the fuck he rhymes about. One of the realest you ever meet. If you heard it in the rhyme, he probably fucking tried it or did it or is doing it. He's that real. He's really, really that real. You know what I mean? This man has stood up for me and got me money just on principle. I'm just putting it right there. He has a great build that he had in an interview. I think he's on Sway, you know, the Sway interview. And he told Sway, activism is a lonely thing. You know what I mean? You're giving people something that they think they want, but they never really want it. You know what he said? You're helping the community, you build it, but they never really, really want it. Well, this is where we're at here. Because I want to say this, though. And this thing about being a 5%er, you're learning, right? Be a 5%. My brother over here, who was supposedly my brother, is going, I'm not with the Black and Brown unit. First of all, I don't care how many Black Americans. I could give you a list. I could show you people. How many people can show you people that are making 6 figures in the shit that you do better? Because they stole some of your shit and sold out along with that. They can't even show you that. People that stole your work, stole shit, devices, writing styles, devices, left you out, said that they was going to put you on, left you out. These are all Black Americans in my history. But you never catch me saying, nah, no, we're not dealing with that Black and Brown unit until Black Americans do something for me. You feel me? I'll never say that shit. That's some bitch shit. And you know what? That's said from someone, and I've said to him, and I'll say to anybody else, that's said by people that don't do anything out there active. Only a non-activist can say shit like that. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because when someone does something for the people, it has nothing to do with how the fuck they're treated. It's about what's fucking right. When we were taught this now, so we're taught that the 85 is blind, deaf, and dumb. God, so why would you get pissed off when they do something that is very blind, that's very deaf, and very dumb? We go to the heart of the matter, the humanity of the matter. How do we get knowledge of self and lose the humanity? Because they were never out there in the fucking street building. You're on the corner smoking, you're on the corner rhyming, you're on the corner making connections with other people selling something illegal or legal. You're hustling, but you're not out there doing something that is not for you, but just for the people. And that's the thing. That's the thing, guy. The people on the street that get talked about the most, the rhymes, everything, they're the ones that are hustling for themselves out in the street. That is not what activism is. Don't say that you're out there in the street and all you got is a hustling resume. The real activists, which includes the mere person that I respect even more, you know, because the King's protest, right? The No King's protest is not a revolutionary protest because the system of the United States of America is not dictatorial. You know what I'm saying? It is oligarchical. So it is not based on one ruling over the many, but the people are scared of that facade, so they protest it again. And it's a level of protest. It's not really too deep, but it's good though. So some awareness, some refusal to accept everything, right? Sometimes we think that's not there at all. But when we go into this, right, for the 5%, we're out here sharing out there. That's activism. You go out there and you share. You're not sharing what you think they want to know. Sorry to say, because if you're doing otherwise, you're doing wrong. But we go out there to teach, and if whoever can deal with the knowledge, we teach them. But we're teaching humanity things that we know, and we're trying to share, make it a better cipher, everything. Everybody that the Father met, he did not teach them the knowledge of self. But everybody that was around the Father, black, brown, yellow, white, 85 or 5 or 10%, because he was around the 10%ers too, making deals. Look at the school we got and the land. He was always doing things for the betterment of all that were around him, whoever they were, at whatever level that they could receive it and or accept it. Ain't that some shit, huh? Ain't that some shit? You know what I mean? So when I see people get the fuck out of his country if it's illegally, this, that, the first thing I see is a lack of humanity. Lack of humanity. Where is the humanity in that? You know the black and the brown are original, and you're telling other original people, get the fuck out. Here's where I have to say, I can hardly believe that unless they were made blind, deaf, and dumb, because the root of that goes into an abnormal abundance, abnormal amount of what the word is. The proper word is credulity. I'm going to define that right now. Versus a suspension of belief, right? Let me explain that, right? In the 140, it tells us not to take things on face value, right? That's what credulity means. People that believe things immediately. Take things on face value. You see? You take things on face value versus what I call suspension of belief. When you watch TV, right, in film, when you study film, because my brother's an actor and my sister was a major in that, television and radio, and did work in television. They used to show me how to watch films the way they do. And they have a thing called suspension of disbelief. You know? So like, I was showing my daughter Speed, you know, the movie Keanu Reeves and shit. And when there's a part where the bus goes over the bridge and makes a 50-foot jump and then lands over to the gap in the bridge and lands. That's some bullshit, right? A big bus, that shit would go straight down, right? That's just bullshit. That's not happening. But when we watch it, we were like, yo, it did it. Right? Fuck it. Because we say fucking suspension of disbelief. So when you watch film, you have a suspension of disbelief, right? There's no such thing as a motherfucker that flies. But if you go watch Superman, you're going to be okay with it. You're not going to be going, yo, this shit doesn't make sense. How is a man flying? That's some bullshit. You don't do that. You suspend your disbelief, right? Because you're trying to like the movie. You know what I'm saying? If it's a drama, a serious drama, and you see some shit that doesn't make sense, they fucked it up. But you try your best to have suspension of disbelief, where you're like, oh, that's not true. But our people, the original people in this oppressed world, we have to suspend belief at all times, right? In other words, we don't believe what they tell us, the government, etc., just because they told us, right? So I'll give you an example, a parallel, right? The concept of a vaccine sounds wonderful. Small, microscopic part of the disease injected into you, small amount, your body can deal with it, and now it has an immunity, right? But then the reality is we suspend belief. Not that the concept is wrong, but who's making this shit? Right? It's the government that makes it. The big pharma, the corporations. So when they make it, I want to look at the ingredients. So when my daughter was little, I said, nah, we ain't having no vaccines. Because I looked at the ingredients and I saw thimerosal, mercury, toxic ingredients, ducks they had a word for it, but it was really duck feces. All this stuff in to make a facsimile of what the virus would be like in the body, but not really the virus that you need immunity from. But it's supposed to do the job. I said, I'm not putting that shit in there. And then now putting 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 in a matter of months to a baby? Nah, not safe. And so when this one came out, the COVID one, show me the ingredients. Pfizer petitioned the courts to not show their ingredients for over 75 years. Very slick, right? Right? Very slick. I said, listen, doesn't matter about whether the science of a vaccine is correct. It's about who's making the shit, right? If somebody says, yo, guns work, they kill people, and I need some shit to kill people and defend myself, right? Where are you going to get your gun from? I'm going to get my gun from this guy. You don't trust the guy that makes the gun. What's the point in the science of the gun? You feel me? The gun is not going to work if you get it from somebody that is not reputable and trustworthy enough to make it right and exact. You're gonna get some blanks in that gun. The parallel is the same thing with immigration. Well, the ICE, they just out here getting people that's illegal. Wait. So wait a minute. Oh, the so-called 5%. I can hardly believe it unless you've been made blind, deaf, and dumb. 85? That's whatever. Maybe some of the 85 because they're hip-hop and they're supposed to be counterculture, but I digress, right? You tell me that you believe something. You believe the government's efficiency to carry out justice. When did this happen? When did this happen, though? The idea, God, of police is a good idea, right? Enforce the community, protect and serve. I like that. Do you disagree with that statement? Protect and serve? Nobody does. Protect and serve. They go, yo, God, you protect and serve your house. Yeah, protect and serve. But none of us feel warmth in our heart, right? Do we feel like a warm feeling in our heart when the police car passes by and it says protect and serve? We don't go like this. You know what? I'm gonna have another drink on this corner. The police pass by for the third time in a row. I think I'm gonna have another drink on the same corner. You know what I mean? Because it's protect and serve. I just, I feel good in my. It says nobody. Nobody black, nobody brown. But the ICE, for some reason, is one of the most efficient organizations. Mind you, we're talking about ICE, though, a derivative of agents that seek illegals and foreigners that go back all the way to the Texas Rangers, right? Who were that's what they named the baseball team after, who were vigilantes that killed Mexicans just because. That's where the Texas Rangers comes from. Or the same ICE, though, that harkens back to the border agents, which are closely aligned with ICE, that would actually, right, for target practice and fun, this is documented just maybe 1 or 2 years ago, would shoot into Mexico, because you could see inside Mexico and see families and stuff just living in Mexico, and shoot at them and kill them as target practice and fun, like a video game. That's what the border agents do. The same border agents align with the ICE agents. The same community and industry and organized compendium of officers that you say are wildly efficient, that only get the people that are illegal, that have cheated the government, have come in here to do ruthless things. You don't know no original people's situations. You don't know about the case history and the fraudulent case. No. When they take you to court, they're fucking you over of a ticket. The government is corrupt. The courts are scams. But none of the people that go through these immigration court cases and have done them for almost 12, 13, 14, 15 years, none of them, have been dealing with any corruption of the court. None of them. See, I got 5%ers that I've taught. I've taught all of Latin America, God. There's not one country that I haven't taught somebody from it. That's how much I've taught. Brothers tell me, I just had one great God tell me, listen, God, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. because I've been dealing with this case. It was closed. I dealt with it for 13 years and it was closed. And all of a sudden, last week I got a letter saying it's reopened. That's fraud, then. You know what I'm saying? Let alone the injustice of stolen land. I'm not even getting on that, because if you don't have the logic, where is your idealism? Because a revolutionary always has idealism about what ought to be and not what is. You know what I'm saying? And never let the impossibility of what ought to be take you into a cynical level of not caring. All I see is not brothers saying, well, we built this country. No. I see brothers selling out and cozying. And it's disgusting to me. If this is the blackness that you call blackness, count me out. Count me out. I'm not in that. Count me the fuck out. This is from people in my nation. You know what I mean? Reparations sounds like an illogical thing. I thought about it, and I give them an answer that deals with a real way that we could do it. But they want the farcical, quick money, get rich quick scheme now that is illogical to even the government's mentality or idea. And they go, well, they gave the Jews and they gave the Japanese. Japanese don't number like the Black American. You know what I mean? The Jews are other white people. That shit got nothing to do with nothing. It's never the same. It's never going to be the same. And a lot of people don't know that the Jews only were given to Israel because they didn't want that many Jews here, because this is a Christian world. They really didn't want Britain and America did not want their countries overrun by those white people that deal with Judaism. And so they gave them their own place. They went and took it. They gave it to them. And it serves as a great eye into the Horn of Africa. You get a double whammy. You get rid of Jews, you get to be able to look at the whole world and have a stronghold right above Africa. You know what I'm saying? That's really the real reason. You know what I mean? Where is your idealism? When you identify with your oppression, you're consciously giving value to the oppressor. You're identifying now with your oppressor. And let me tell you something, guys. The main question I get, though, is the Black American doesn't get to have their own flag because it's an imperialist flag. The American flag is not a black flag, right? Et cetera, et cetera. And I say, tough. Too bad. Too bad. When the Jamaican carries their flag, though, it's representing a whole bunch of cultural ideas. Puerto Rican saves it. Puerto Ricans, America had a gag law. I don't know if you ever heard this. They had a gag law. It's called the gag law, right? And until the 1950s, it was still up. So they took it over in 1898. For about 50 plus years, you could get jailed or killed or shot if you had a Puerto Rican flag. So when people wonder why Puerto Ricans are obsessed with holding the flag, that's part of the reason. But the Puerto Rican flag was made as an independence flag. That's why it mirrors it's literally a color mirror of the Cuban flag. See how you just reverse the colors because they were in line with Cuba going for their independence. You know what I mean? Because it was during the Spanish-American War, right? They didn't know that America was going to take them. They thought they were going to be independent, free from Spain, right? So it has so when you look at that Puerto Rican flag, it represents a lot of struggle for independence, which is still trying to happen, working to happen. It represents the cultures just like any other flag. But you know what? The real question that Black America, especially when now there's stop all that bullshit, Americans, the community is yours. The country is not. You know what I mean? When we talk about what the real question should be for Black Americans that have the knowledge of self is, why was he brought the knowledge of self and not anywhere else? This whole thing is oppressed. No one's going to tell me that Latin America is not going through shit, or the Caribbean or Mexico as bad as what America is. It's all going through levels of slavery. Different levels, different styles. But it goes into the United States of America. The Black American gets the knowledge of self because they have a unique vantage point of being non-nationalist. God, who could you bring the knowledge of self to where they could see all of humanity and not have a nationalistic lens? Who said that nationalism is a disease? You know who said that? People don't think so, but it was Che Guevara. Because remember, Che Guevara is not Cuban, but he was all up in that Cuban Revolution. He was Argentinian. And that's why he went to the Congo to start to stir up revolution, but it didn't work. He went into where he was killed at, right? I always forget. Right? But I think I'm getting it reversed. Forgetting where he was killed. In Bolivia. I was going to say that, but I didn't want to guess. Right? Because he was Argentinian. And he was killed in Bolivia because the people there just couldn't, they were too scared of revolution. So they're kind of snitching on all the Cuban soldiers. You know what I mean? And so they couldn't develop the revolution there. And that's where he was killed. Right? But he didn't see nationalism where it's just about Argentina. It was about everything. It was about all the brown. You know what I mean? And he saw himself. He started to embrace what people didn't embrace. He started to embrace mestizo. Mestizo is a term that means the Spaniard mixed with the Indian, right? Which makes a complexion like mine, where we have like European features, but also indigenous features, right? They call it the mestizo, right? He was trying to say that, listen, you're not white, you're that, you know? Because over there, the mestizo would try to be what they call a Ladino, someone that is saying they're definitely not Indian. They're more Europeanized and more Spaniard, you know? But he wasn't having that, right? Be very wary of the nationalism. But the Black American was able to shed that and look through that. This is why it was brought here. It was brought here because they are the perfect conduit to bring it to everybody else. And I'll never go away from saying that because it was the Black man of America that taught me this knowledge of self. And everything I'm saying to you now, they taught that to me, not the other way around. But I'm going to say this, though. Some quick points to end it all because it becomes a personal thing, right? A lot of people want to embrace these Black ideologies that have no answers, no builds. But I'm actually to look at the work that we do, the work that I've done, and see what's blacker. There's nothing blacker than the entire life that I've had. You know what I mean? And when we start to do that shit, where we go, and it's a sociological shit. You know what I mean? Peace. Peace, almighty. All right? When we start to look at the Latinos and say they don't have this, let's stop looking at the way the 85% behave and then say that they are not something. You know what I'm saying? If you look at a Puerto Rican and they behave in a way that's anti-Black, we're supposed to be looking at he doesn't know who he is. Not looking at him saying, oh, he hates me. You feel me? He hates me. We're supposed to be above that. Now, look, that don't mean that you're not aware of the 85. The 85 is going to hate just because. They got hatred in their heart. A lot of their identity is based on the hatred. But what I'm saying is this, though. Our humanity is based on saying, that's an 85. So when I hear brothers say, and I'll recap just this brief point. I hear some of my brothers with knowledge of self. Brothers, I did songs with them. That's a real communal thing. We do a song with them. It's like, you know, and they say, fuck this Black and brown unity. Y'all wasn't doing something with us and you understand what you. First of all, get out your own fucking head. I never would say that for two reasons. And that's devilishment of separation. But who are you to act like you're bestowing the ultimate activism? So if they don't, if they're like, yo, I'm not even gonna add on with this stuff. First of all, stop acting like you were activists and that if I say, oh, I'm not gonna add on with you, it's gonna ruin everything. So it's like, oh, I'm not gonna. Let's say Jamaicans have a protest, right? It's like, Jamaicans, they treat me like shit though. I went to the Barrington Levy concert. They was horrible with me. By the way, I did see Barrington Levy once, and they were incredible with me. I was the lightest in there, and they was wonderful with me, man. I was singing along with everybody. The shit was fucking. Cause Levy's, man, he's something else, man. You know what I mean? But and he got there late because he got lost in New York. He actually got he got lost. You know, or that's what he said, because you know artists be saying shit. But he gave a fucking performance though. But I'm not gonna fuck with the Jamaicans because some of them treating me bad. Where the hell does my experience get to judge a whole people's? You know what I'm saying? You realize that some 85s, right? Black 85, you'll be analysis like you, right? They assume sometimes that I have hatred for them because they get so much hatred. You see what I'm saying? Now, am I supposed to do that? Because I'm from Medina. I was going to all these neighborhoods. And if I did that, I'd be all like shook. I'd be in Bed-Stuy like this. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be able to go anywhere if I had that thing. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of Dominicans that don't like Puerto Ricans, man. They say all type of shit. A lot of Dominicans would say body as more of an insult. So for years I would be like, nah, say body. Don't be, say the whole thing, right? But then now today, a lot of them say body and they don't mean it that way. It's more of a, right? So it's more a term of endearment, right? You gotta look at the people, what they're saying. But I don't judge what these people said to everybody else. You know what I'm saying? I don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Because we know the science of the 5, 10, and 85. So when people start saying today's sociology, young millennials, they go, I'm black, and for other non-black, non-black, and they try to describe other original people as not being black, but being not white, and they go through all these words. They're like, yo, they're all original people. They are all original people. You know what I'm saying? And you know that if we didn't get treated differently, we would have fucking caused a revolution a fucking million years ago. But when we go outside, I guarantee you, right? I always tell the guy, I roll with my black seed, they're gonna treat him differently than me. They might even accept him more because he's with me. You know what I'm saying? But when I roll by myself, motherfuckers treat me like a Nazi. People forget that. Yo, growing up, I have a twin brother, so he knows, man. We worked at the same job. I got told I walked the wrong way at the job. I put my clothes on the wrong way. I got told all this stuff. First one to get, when we grew up in an all Puerto Rican neighborhood, but I was the one where security guards were stopping me and shit like that all the time. Oh, you stealing something? What's in your hand? I don't know. All that. Did you come in with that? You know when they do that? Did you come in with that? All that shit, right? But it's the way that people get treated. We start to make assumptions, and when you get older, you get burnt out. And a lot of 5%ers that I'm seeing do this kind of shit is because they burnt out and they want to see wins. They want to see wins. Just like when Obama was elected, all of a sudden, the imperialism of the world, of the United States, meant nothing. Obama! Yo, I had 5% trying to sell me Obama shit. I said, dude,
I'm still.
no, man. You know what I mean? I can't do it. I loved his articulate. I love the way he spoke, all that kind of shit. But he did devilish shit. And a lot of it was unique.
Most politicians.
Drone warfare, he really initiated. He got a Nobel Prize for killing Gaddafi. He ruined Libya, which really took back the whole of Africa for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Because Libya was the shit. You know what I mean? Right? So anyway, let's go back. This is really the crux of it. I'm near the end of this, so I'm going to quickly read this stuff. I wanted to be here till build hour because I got to go get my groceries, before Trader Joe's closes and shit. You know what I mean? But the thing, listen, if you're having a vegan diet and you eat like the way I eat, you cannot survive going to Whole Foods. You get your specialty items at Whole Foods. You don't buy like the compra. You don't do the shopping at Whole Foods. You don't. No. You want to do healthy shopping? You go to Trader Joe's. You know what I mean?
That's expensive.
You get you buy. You go to Whole Foods, buy things on sale, or buy things that you don't find anywhere else. That's what you do there. You know what I mean? You know? Come on. What do they have? You get. I did it as my daughter really wanted to eat like the food in there. They got that food for like $10 a pound. You know, when you buy a meal there, who's gonna do that? I said, you really want? She's 11, so you know I let her do it. You really wanted this, so I got it for you, right? But next time we're gonna go to a restaurant. We might as well go to a restaurant. You know what I mean? But I you know, going back to this though, I wanted this to be the nothing's ever complete. But this is the beginning of being definitive because my brother King Kamal really sparked me to do this. Gave me bullet points that I think I've gone over in my own way about this blackness. Because let me tell you something, right? Yo, not one moment I was living my life trying to say, oh, I gotta be black. I was really being black, just doing what I do. You know what I'm saying? Just doing what I do. Because I grew up in an all Puerto Rican neighborhood, but I'm doing everything black. Only other Puerto Ricans is getting upset about it. Like my dad, others, like, yo, I don't know. Right? But everywhere that I went and met great people of all original shades, it was like, well, that's what it is. You are what you are. Whether I'm doing hip hop or I'm doing some salsa. It's all different black stuff. It's all different black stuff. You know what I'm saying? And the diaspora is what we need to be studying. Yeah. You know what I mean? 100%. The diaspora is because we've all been doing it. We've all been doing it and all been doing it in unique ways. But that's really what it was. Let me look at some of these comments here and stuff. Chair was, he's from Argentina. He's Argentinian. You know, let me tell you something. If you trust that ICE does things right and that the courts do right by everyone that is illegal, then you just ignored how many organizations. There were organizations that got defunded immediately through the Doge. This was months ago. People weren't even doing the knowledge that actually work on those cases. So taking people through the process of making them legal immigrants. That's a long process, and there are organizations that do that. Most of those organizations got ousted. You know what I mean? And when they go to Doge, though, are they going to get the Brazilian gang, Venezuelan gang members that are out there doing shit? No, they didn't go to them. They looked at cards and they looked at documents to find people, which means they got people that were already documented and just picked them up and took them out. You know what I mean? That has more in line to do with Germany, Nazi Germany, than anything else. You know what I mean? Because before the Nazis started killing the Jews, they was killing the Romani people. Romani people coming from southern Spain, all that, the real roots of the Spaniards that take over, right? And those are the people that they were killing first. That's why if you ever talk to Russians for a while and you hear this shit, right, Russians will always say that they hate gypsies. You know what a gypsy is? A gypsy is the Romani people. Those are the original people of Rome, of Russia. Because all of that parts here, all of this was taken over by the Moors, and that extends into Russia, into these parts over here, and into Russia here. So you have all of the Romani people and all of the Moors taking over large parts. That's why when you go to the Kremlin, what type of buildings? You know the buildings you see in the Kremlin? See how they look like they're domes? The dome shapes. That's the Moorish architecture. Yeah, those are more. Yeah, it's Moorish architecture. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's unique to Moorish architecture because Moorish architecture was circular with the domes, not like the ancient Egyptian Comitian architecture. You know what I mean? See, all original people, foundations. But Russian people, that's not. I hate the gypsies. Because those are original people. Those are original people, and whatever originality they had, they grafted it out. That's why you see Russians that they be looking a little dark and shit like that. Yeah, but they whitewash. They whitewash. You know, they whitewash. You know. Yes, I've heard the term Pardo. Yeah, you know. Look, whitewashing happens everywhere. A term for the hick, country hick, farm hick in Puerto Rico is called jibaro, right? In Ivan Van Soto had found the etymology of that word jibaro was an African word.
Wow.
When you study Puerto Rican history, when Puerto Rico was taken over by the U.S., right? Certain people like Luis Muniz Marin that became the governor and was a sellout that transitioned into free associated state commonwealth and did that whole thing that defined it that way so we could be owned by them and feel free. He also started and advocated a scholarship coming from the bougie white scholars in Puerto Rico that were Spaniard and keeping on to Spaniard tradition, that Spanish was the language, Spaniard was the root, and the term Jibaro got embraced as the rural white Puerto Rican. You see what I'm saying? When in reality, it was really the black, brown, and the very light, whites that they were light, but that they had become farmers and all that, and they had been there, and they were never really the European whites that owned the island. Those are the real Jibaros, the real farmers, the real people that founded all of Puerto Rico. You know what I mean? So all the countries you go to have some type of whitewash history.
Yeah.
People just don't know what that history is.
It's true.
You know what I mean? Very important. Very important. You know what I mean? Trying to look here. This is a lot of comments. I'm gonna try to get these as fast as I can because I have to leave. But you know what I'm saying? Good history, G1. Thank you. If you're 5%, you've probably done it now. You shouldn't be falling for the okie doke. That's right, King. Good stuff. G1, if you have any literature on this or any other builds or stuff, I would like to email me this, please. I haven't read that book. I think if they made a movie, I think I saw that movie, though. Very gritty movie, I remember, called City of God, dealing with that. Yeah. Real gritty movie. I did see the movie, though. But, guys, listen, that's all I wanted to go into. If anybody has any issue or anything like that, we can continue the discussion next week or in the email, or if you have my number, text me and everything, all right? But until then, peace. God, email.